Hey everyone, welcome to this week's training. Excuse me. This topic has been coming to me over and over and over again. I would say for the past month. And sometimes I'm quick, sometimes I'm slow. This time I feel like, somewhere in the middle to actually just stop and realize that this is something so much bigger that so many more women are going through and struggling with. So, this is why we are talking about what actually happens in your relationships when you heal. So, hey, welcome in. I am so glad that you're here with us. Just give us a quick hello in the comments so we know that you're here with us. Where are you joining from today? Put it in the comments. This is a global Facebook community, and I love connecting people and knowing where everybody's coming in from. So, whether you're here live or if you're here in the replay, just let us know that you're here. Also, light up the chat with any kind of comments and what you're hoping to get out of today. I know it's a really short training, so I'm going to dive right in. And what I want to share is, again, something that I don't believe, just because I get so many questions about it, I don't believe that this is something talked about nearly enough within the personal growth space. So I just want to start by asking you something. Have you ever done the work, like really done it, really committed, showing up, doing the shadow work, right? Going to therapy, working in releasing old patterns and healing those wounds, and you started showing up differently in your life. And then you looked around at the people closest to you and thought, I don't fit here anymore. So I just want that to land. Is that you? Have you felt that? If you are tuning in, more than likely you have felt that or are currently feeling that. So just put a yes in the comments. This is a safe place, a safe space. I intentionally created it, whether you're watching it in the Facebook group or on YouTube. This is very intentional to be able to speak what is true for us, to know that you have the support, to know that you're not alone, and then to have the answers moving forward. So, and when you're looking around at these people, it might be your family that you're looking at and you're like, I don't know where I fit. Or I don't, usually it's like, I don't fit here anymore. And then later it usually comes into, I don't know where I fit. It's a slight difference, but there's a difference. So maybe it is your family, maybe it is your partner, maybe it's the friendships that you've had for years and sometimes decades. And now something that used to feel comfortable and just like normal and like home sort of feels off. It feels really uncomfortable. Sort of like a dress that's too tight. Right? Or just yeah, it's just like something that you've outgrown. And it's not that you don't love these people. You do, and that's why it's actually uncomfortable, because you do love them, but you recognize that something has shifted and you can actually feel it. And even if you can't quite name it yet, you know internally that there is something different. So if that's you, stay with me, because in the next few minutes, this is all for you. So here's what I hear from the women in this doing the work all the time. This was my own experience as well. And just so you know, what we're talking about today is typically the reason why, one of the big reasons why we stay in those old patterns, I'll say, for longer than we want to, is because of the fear of these relationships shifting, of things changing. I know that was a big fear for me that I worked through as I was growing into my business, as I started my business, even before I started my business. So the women who are doing the serious work, the real inner work, and I mean the real work, not just like reading books, but going through it, right? Doing the thing. We go through this season where we feel actually more alive. And this is what usually happens, right? These two things exist in the same space. We usually feel more alive than we have in a very long time. And then we feel more alone than we had ever expected. And it's not because you've done something wrong. It's not because you're isolating, actually, right? It's not because healing actually messed something up within you, but it's because the people around you haven't crossed that same threshold yet. They haven't moved in that direction. They haven't catapulted into that next level yet. And that gap between where you are and where the people you love still are, this creates a really strange, disoriented feeling of like not belonging anywhere sometimes. Right? Sometimes we do have that like crew of people, the community of people that get it, that are doing the work. And I love that there are more of those. But sometimes it can be very, very lonely. It could feel very lonely. And here's the thing is that you're not going to go back to who you were. That is a conscious choice. It's not because you can't go back, it's because you refuse to go back. That version of you no longer aligns with this next level, this more authentic version of yourself, right? So you haven't, and here's the thing that creates the disorientation is that you've let go of a lot of like the belief systems and the behaviors that used to align with you, and you haven't fully arrived yet, right? The new relationships, the new community, the people who will get you at this level, even you fully have not shown up yet. So you're standing in a doorway, one foot out of the old world, right? Your old world, and one foot not quite in the new one. You might have a little tippy toe in there, right? And that place, that in between, can often feel like the loneliest stretch of growth that almost nobody warns you about. Is this hitting? Put something in the comments, be like, oh my gosh, this is hitting, or maybe not quite, right? And it's okay. There's no right or wrong. This is just what lands for you. So, I want to say something clearly because a lot of times when we're in this in between state, we often feel like there's something wrong, something went wrong. And this isn't actually a signal that something went wrong, it's a sign that something went right. So, that might be a little confusing, or if you get it, if you know, you know, right? Here's why. Okay. The old patterns, the people pleasing, the overfunctioning, the shrinking, the dysfunction that you learned to navigate just to feel safe and loved when you were younger, and you continued on, those patterns weren't just yours. They were relational. So much of our healing and so much of our growth comes from relational. Okay, so they lived in the space, these old parts of you lived in a space between you and the people around you. And when you started releasing them, when you stopped playing your old role, the system around you feels it and it pushes back. Or, I mean, these can be one and the same as well. It pushes back, it doesn't know what to do with the new you. And those two usually come hand in hand. There's pushback because they don't know how to adjust to you yet. Okay. So, your mom, who's used to certain dynamics, your partner, who's still working through their own stuff, your friends who knew that version of you who stayed small, none of it is personal. Okay. I want you to hear that. That is so, so important because it feels very personal. None of it is personal. It's actually predictable and it's actually textbook. When you change, the relationships built around the old version of you, they have to recalibrate. And not all of them will. And it's not going to be right away. Some may not at all recalibrate. Right? That doesn't mean that you did something wrong. It means that you actually crossed the threshold. So now here's where I want to be really, really raw with you, because this is the part that trips women up the most, is that the when the loneliness hits, and if it hasn't hit yet, it will hit. There are two very common responses, and both of them feel highly justified in the moment, and both of them will actually keep you stuck. Okay, so the first the first step is actually collapsing back in. This is the first reaction that or response that most women have. First is collapsing back in. This is a trap. There's a pull when the loneliness gets heavy enough to soften yourself just enough to fit in again, right? To stop rocking the relational boat, to shrink back into the old dynamic, because at least there you felt connected, even if that connection was built on dysfunction. And I totally understand that pull. It makes complete sense. I have felt it. I have experienced it. I have fallen into the trap. Many of the women that I have worked with have seen it, have noticed it, fallen into the trap. But what we want to do is actually, decrease the time that we're in the trap. Right, and catch it sooner, and then just embody that next version. So anyways, but that's the trap. It makes sense because your nervous system, our nervous system specifically in women, is wired, and this is for humans, but there's even a stronger wiring of this, is wired for belonging. William Glasser talks about it in reality therapy in more of a general space of like the need for to love and to be loved, and the need for belonging, the basic needs of humans on a relational level. So our nervous system will choose familiar pain over unfamiliar freedom every single time if you let it. Okay. But here's what I want you to hear very clearly, is that going back, falling into those old patterns, it actually doesn't make you feel more connected or even be more connected. It makes you more invisible. You will beat yourself up for going back there. It's this vicious cycle of shame. We don't need any more of that. You don't solve loneliness by abandoning yourself. You just trade one kind of lonely for another. Okay, I want to say that again. You trade one kind of lonely for another. So that's the first trap. The first trap is collapsing back in, re igniting those past behaviors. The second trap, and this is one that absolutely does not get talked about enough. I don't even know, like, nobody ever explained this to me. This was something that I learned through my own pain and suffering that ended up with a deeper sense of connection and understanding with myself. So I'm super grateful for it. And this is what I really want you to hear from this. The second trap is elevating yourself above it and above them, right? This one is a lot subtler. And honestly, it is just as costly as collapsing back and abandoning yourself. Sometimes when we do the deep work, we can start to look at the people around us, the ones that are still in the patterns, still in the dysfunction, and we begin to judge them. And we can say things like, I'm not judging them, but, right, they're not quite doing the work that I've done. Um, I've said that. And I think about that and just how hurtful that was to me and to the other people. And yes, they're not doing some of the work that I'm doing. But that doesn't mean that I am better than, right? We begin to judge them, to pull away, not just from the behavior, but from the actual person. And we quietly actually, we do place ourselves a level above them. I've done the work. They haven't. I've grown. They're still stuck, right? And it feels like clarity. And it can even feel like self protection. But what is actually going on here is disconnection actually dressed up as discernment. It's wearing this beautiful costume of spirituality and self love and self growth, which is all happening, but it definitely creates even more of a disconnection. Because here's the thing, real growth doesn't make us superior to the people who haven't crossed the same threshold yet. And actually, um, makes us like the real healing makes us more compassionate. It helps us see their patterns and wounds, not as like character flaws. The same way we had to learn to see our own is through self compassion. And when we move into judgment and elevation, we're not actually free of the dysfunction. We're just relating to it from a very new angle. And now we've created a different kind of relational like rupture, one where we're alone, not because we've outgrown the connection, but because we've decided that we are too evolved for it. If this is hitting something raw and you're getting mad with me, if you're getting angry, if you're being activated, then that is information to look at too. Because I know it was activating for me to hear too. So just because we have decided that we're too evolved for it, that's actually not a threshold. That is a protective wall that we're building. So here, I want to pause here, right? How does that sound? Are you getting activated? Yes. Just be like, I am activated. I want to crawl through this, monitor or whatever you're watching on. Just take that as information. I know I was there. I've seen women through this too. So here's the thing, it's so important to pause here because oftentimes we think if we lean into compassion for ourselves, for another person, we are giving up our own boundaries. And here I want to talk about how compassion and boundaries can be created in the same space. So please, if you have made it this long, do not abandon. Do not jump ship, right? Just because you're activated. So I'm going to pause here, and because I know that some of you are thinking this, like, Leanne, if I soften, this was something I thought too. This is something that I've heard from so many of the women that I've worked with. If I soften, if I have compassion for them, doesn't that mean I'm letting them off the hook? Doesn't that mean I will fall right back into the old patterns I have worked so hard to leave? I hear that fear. It makes complete sense. And I want to speak to it directly. Okay. I know that we're over the time that I told you guys we were going to be over. This is so important. This is the meat of your healing. Okay. So I hear that, it makes sense, and I want to speak to that. Compassion and boundaries are not opposites, they are not in conflict. They actually live beautifully in the same space. And when we understand what each one is actually for, okay? So compassion is about how you see someone. It's the part of you that can look at your mom or your partner or whoever it is and see their wounds, see their conditioning, the ways that they learn to survive, and hold some tenderness for their humanity, even when their behavior is hurtful, even when you can't be close to them right now. You can still see that. Boundaries, so that's the compassion. Boundaries about how you protect yourself, what you allow, what you don't, what you're available for, what you're not. Okay, one is about your heart, the other is about your limits. Okay, so softening your heart towards someone does not automatically open your limits to them. I want you to hear that. Softening your heart towards someone does not automatically open your limits to them. In fact, and this is really important, the clearest, most grounded boundaries I've ever seen come from women who are operating from compassion rather than anger. These are the strongest boundaries when we can speak them, when we can hold compassion, and they are heard and they are felt. Because when your boundary comes from clarity and compassion rather than reactivity, anger, it doesn't waver. It does not waver. You're not white knuckling it, right? You're not constantly redeciding. You know what you're protecting and why. And that knowing is steady. Okay. Armor is not a boundary. Armor is a wall that you live inside. And that's actually where the isolation and the loneliness are held. You can be soft and boundaried. You can love someone and not be available for their dysfunction. You can have compassion for where they are and still choose not to go back there yourself. That's not weakness. That's some of the most advanced work that there is through relational. Okay? How does that land? What are your thoughts? Actually, more important than your thoughts, what are your feelings? Maybe not more important, just as important, but we always start with body, right? So, what actually moves you through the in between? This is the bridge. So, here's what I've seen in 20 years of clinical practice, my own life, 6.5 years, 6.5 years of my business, women's empowerment. This is what I've learned. The stretch, it doesn't last forever. The loneliness, it doesn't last forever, but you can't rush it by going backwards and you can't bypass it from going above. Believe me, I tried both. What's actually moving you through this is this like temporary scaffolding I want you to think about, right? This community that meets you here, right? Not the you from 5 years ago, not the you your family still expects, but the you that's emerging right now. So women who are either further along the same path or walking right alongside of you. It's a space where you don't have to explain yourself or shrink or perform, right? Where the growth that you have actually done is assumed, right? It's just like it's almost like expected. It's not questioned. It's like, well, of course you're doing this work. Why wouldn't you be? Right? That kind of resonance being truly seen at the level that you're actually operating at, this is what recalibrates your nervous system to new kinds of connection, right? And it's what makes it possible to hold loving space for the people in your life who haven't yet caught up. And you're doing that without abandoning yourself. So you don't need to find all of your new people at once, and you're probably not going to. You just need one room, one space where you belong in the new version of yourself. So, if what I've shared today resonates, if you're in that in between right now and you're ready to stop white knuckling it all alone, I want you to, I'm inviting you in to have a conversation with me, right? A real conversation. We'll talk about where you are, what's feeling stuck or lonely, whether working together makes sense to where you're headed, whether this community, Women on the Rise, or another community is where you're headed. So I'm going to put the link to book in the comments. Make sure you grab it, choose a time that works for you, and let's just have a real, compassionate, honest conversation. And if you're not quite there yet, just drop a little heart in the comments. Share this with a woman who you know needed to hear it today. And follow along here, YouTube, right? Follow so that you don't miss what's coming next. And I just want to acknowledge you and thank you for doing the work that you're doing. This work matters. You matter. And I'll see you soon.